Welcome to your top-rated global podcast that is your one-stop shop specializing in entrepreneurship, self-development, smart investment decisions, and other relevant topics that add value. This podcast is hosted by owner, doctor, and content creator Dustin Steffi. We are blessed to have accolades that include a 2022 nomination by the People's Podcast Awards in the category of business, which is voted on by the people, all of you. Money donated to two amazing causes, cystic fibrosis and the Boys and Girls Club. Lastly, global recognition of being a top 50 podcast in 4 countries. Without further ado, let's chop it up. Welcome to another episode of Chopping with Fire. You are joined today by your host, Dustin Steffi, and I have a wonderful expert guest that is with me. I have the author of the book 3 Chords, Rocco Carriero, on with me as well. Rocco, how are you?
I'm doing terrific. How are you doing today, Dustin?
I'm doing well. It's about 85 degrees and hot, but I'm inside. There's an AC, so I'm okay.
Gotta have AC in Reno.
Gotta have AC in general. I mean, I would die. I like my house at like 68, so I'm like a polar bear.
Hey, that's literally cool.
Yeah, literally, pun intended.
Yeah.
With that being said, Rocco, let's just dive in. You're an interesting person. You have a lot of accolades behind you. There's a lot of intellect behind you. I kind of want my listeners to kind of understand who's on with me. So let's just dive into your story.
Yeah, sure. Basically grew up in a mid-sized town on Long Island, New York, a town called Patchogue. My parents immigrated to the United States in 1962. My dad was a tailor, went to work for a tailor in our town, then eventually opened up his own tailor shop, learned the world of business and entrepreneurship from spending a lot of time at the tailor shop, just seeing how business was being done. Grew up with a large Italian American family surrounding us. Wasn't a great student in high school, but did love business. Went off to college. When I was at the age of 19, college threw me out, kicked me out of school, and for just not focusing on my grades. It focused on throwing parties and making money, and the school didn't really like that. Was a big disappointment to my parents at that point. Came back with a vengeance, and got back into school, finished school, got my MBA in banking finance, ended up in the world of financial services, and working with highly successful business owners, CEOs, and entrepreneurs, managing close to $1 billion of assets, and then decided to write the book, 3 Chords Approach to Life and Wealth Management for Business Owners. And that's what brought me here on the podcast today.
Lot to unpackage from that. First and foremost, I have a fellow Italian on, so I appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact of the tailor portion. I think a lot, and maybe it's the Italian in me, I like a lot of those tailor jobs, because if you look at history in the past, most tailors were well respected back in the day, right? Because it was more for like the mobs and stuff like that, right? You were tailoring for big people, and so you not only learn the business side, but you also learn a lot more than that, in my opinion. I don't know if that happened within your family, but in history, from what I studied, that's kind of what I learned with some of the tailors back in the day. I also can relate with you in the partying in school. My first semester in most people don't know this about me unless they were, well, partying with me. I got a 1.3 in my first semester for my GPA, which is very abnormal of me. I am highly intelligent and I do pride myself in graduating with high distinction, but partying was more important than school for my first semester anyway, because I was so good in high school. I didn't experience any of that. So popped me out on my own island and I experienced it and then some, and then the butt chewing before.
We would have been great friends in college.
I think we would have thrown the best parties, uh,
Definitely.
the difference for me is my parents also got after me, and so my next semester I pulled a 3.8 because I was on academic probation and they were threatening to kick me out of school. And so I didn't want that. I also was going to lose all my scholarships and my sports and athletic scholarships as well too. So you can't play a sport when you don't put in the work for school. So I learned fast.
Sometimes those are the best, those hard slaps in the face are sometimes what people need. It certainly was a turning point for me at the age of 19, for sure.
The only accolade I don't have yet with you right now is I still have not published my book, but I'm trying. I'm getting there.
It's hard. It took me 7 years to write the book. Shouldn't have taken 7 years, but it did. And it's one of those things where you just got to kind of focus and get up at 3:45 in the morning and just kind of work at it. And you can't do it all at once. You got to break it out into pieces. But once it's done, and the other thing is it's never going to be absolutely totally perfect. So if you wait for that, it's never going to get done. So do the best job that you can, get it printed, and then you can always go back and revisit it. I'm in the process now of doing the 3 chords approach to life and wealth management revisited, because that should come out some later this year or something.
Yeah, that it's like my dissertation in my PhD. I restarted that thing like 30 or 40 times before
Wow.
I finally got a draft that I really liked.
Yeah, it takes time, but you'll get it done. I'm working on 2 other books now, and one is around recipes for retirement. It's gonna have Italian recipes in it. You're probably gonna enjoy it.
I think so. I think that'll be one that I really will thoroughly enjoy. I would think.
Yeah.
You got accolades backing you behind your book too. From what I saw, you not only had interviews surrounded around it, and I'm not counting like this podcast right now or other podcasts. You've had bigger interviews like with in NBC, right? Or
Yeah.
it was NBC. You have it's a best-selling book, New York Times bestseller, correct?
I don't know if it was a New York Times bestseller, but it was definitely a bestseller on a couple lists. I don't know if it was a New York Times bestseller. I didn't focus on that. What's interesting about the book that I wrote, it very much is focused on a particular segment of the population, which is CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners. So it's not really like a mass market kind of book. It's for people that kind of fit that category that are having the challenges that you kind of opened up the show with around like business, family, self, and is struggling with it, right? And so and that's why I wrote it. True wealth was around, and I saw these highly successful business owners. I was like, well, who's truly wealthy? And it was the person that was obviously a phenomenal business person, but also took care of themselves as an individual, and also was there for their family and their friends. And so it wasn't just around business, right? The people that just made a ton of money and just were focused on business, you never saw the true wealth. They never got truly wealthy, never.
And I don't want to overstep you, but you did say something that I politely disagree with. Like you said, the book is tailored to entrepreneurs, wealth, and business people. But I think it's tailored a little bit more based off of some of the things that I've read in it, because I'm about a quarter of the way through. I
Cool.
think aspiring people that are looking to go into the field, it almost gives a snapshot of some of the struggles too. So I think it tailors a lot to a wider demographic than even you and I think.
Yeah, if you think about the three chords, financial, it really could apply to anybody. It really could. The idea of financial being one of the chords, and which everybody has, and then self, and then family. So it does apply to everybody. You are correct. This particular book was it kind of tilted towards, if somebody was a entrepreneur, a business owner, a CEO, they were able to relate a little bit more to it, or an aspiring one as well, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not here to like call you out on it, right?
No,
I'm actually giving you more kudos. I think it does reach a wider audience, but I think you're right. The main audience are the people that can relate right now, that are in the thick of it, and I get that for sure. But I'm putting my hat on as if I weren't.
Uh-huh.
And I do see some cool things in there for people where, I don't know, it works. I mean, I've always applied business even to my personal life, because there's a lot of lessons learned in business that you can apply to personal life.
Totally. Absolutely. That's, as my kids get older, whatever they decide to do in their life, fully going to support them. But I kind of do hope that they go the route of being entrepreneurs, because being an entrepreneur does create certain skills in one's life that can be applied to all areas of one's life. I mean, I think it helps you be able to deal with adversity more, challenge, a lot of different things, really. Somebody once had said to me, listen, Rocco, when I was younger, they're like, listen, I hope that you become a millionaire. I was like, I hope so, I do too. And he said, not for what you can buy with the money, but for what it will make of you in becoming a millionaire. And I never forgot that. And listeners that are out there, it's not necessarily about what you can buy with the money. It's the person that you become as a result of learning what's involved in creating the resources.
Absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of your book, I do want to dive in a little bit into it.
Sure.
Not like read it. Like, I guess we could read it page for page if we wanted to, but I want to dive into the main concepts, right? I do want to dive into the three chords. I want to break them out a little bit. I think, and I use this loosely because I have a wide range of listeners, whether it be global or domestic. I think sometimes when people go into entrepreneurship, the thought process behind it is, if I go into business for myself, one, I'm not working for the man. Two, I'm going to have more time. And three, I'm going to make more money. But then I think as people dive into entrepreneurship a little more, they start seeing the same things that you and I have seen when we dove in, right? It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of dedication. You're on your own island sometimes because it is your business, your baby, and no one understands it. And you are submerging yourself in it, which means that things that are in your life right now, whether it be you're married, whether it be you have kids, whether it be you have hobbies, those start getting put kind of in the wastebasket for a while as you start living and breathing the business that you're trying to create your own success. Now, I'm not going to say that you're never going to have time. I'm not going to say you're never going to have money. I'm not going to say any of that stuff whatsoever. What I am saying, though, is it takes a lot of time to get to that point. And I think the three chords that you bring up kind of explain it really well. So I'd love to dive in.
Let's do it.
All right. So let's start with the first one, whichever one you prefer.
Let's start with the first chord of let's do the first chord of self, right? Most business owners put themselves last, but let's take the first chord of self.
Let's do it.
So when you think about self, right, it's yourself as an individual, right? So three chords represent yourself as an individual, your family slash outside relationships, and also your business. So first chords meaning self is, are you taking care of yourself, right? Are you letting yourself just go? Are you going to doctor's appointments? Are you exercising? Are you eating right? are you aware of your numbers, right? Not just your financial numbers, but are you aware of your own numbers, right? I every 3 to 4 months, I get blood tests done and I measure my numbers. I do my inner age score, pretty cool tool called Inside Tracker that's out there. I'm 49 years old right now. It says my inner age score is 46, and the best I could have it be is 38. That's really important to me. You know, it's useless to creating all this money and have all these relationships become useless if I don't focus on taking care of myself. So, first chord being self, personal development, professional development, all the things that revolve around you is self, and that pretty much wraps up the first chord.
So with that first chord, I think that's a really important chord because, like you said, it's taking care of yourself. So other things that revolve around that chord are you taking enough time to do the things that make you happy too?
Absolutely. A lot of business owners, or people, sometimes they feel like it's a little bit selfish if they have a little too much time for themselves or they take time for themselves. And we're all guilty of it. I mean, that's of all the three chords, that's the chord that I need the most work on. And I wrote the book on it. And so it's, hobbies, interest. I mean, some people are really good at it. Some people are so good at it. But that's I found most people are really good at 2 out of 3 of the chords, right? One chord is usually they really struggle with. And so whether it's if they take really great care of themselves and they're super successful business owners, then you sometimes see them not spend any time with the family. Or if they're really great at business and family, they lack on taking care of themselves. Or if they're really great with their family and themselves, they let their business go away. So, all three is real tough to do, but if you pay attention to all three, you'll do better that way.
Which let's dive into the next chord. I think we should dive into family.
Yeah, let's do it. So, family. So most business owners that go to work during the day, they come home at night, wake up in the morning with their families, and they run their businesses and they believe they're creating wealth to take care of their families and have their families be in better position. But that sometimes becomes too much where it's like, okay, well, they focus on the business, but their family feels like, well, there's second fiddle or third fiddle here, where because the parent may not actually be around or the spouse may not be around. So what I found is the only way, it's going to kind of sound funny, right? And I talk to my family about this, and sometimes they laugh at me. The only way to really make sure that you get the most amount of time with your family is to schedule it. Business people know that they're really good at scheduling appointments with customers, clients, prospects, but you also got to schedule time with your family, and things that are scheduled have a very high percentage chance of happening. Things that are not scheduled have a very high percentage chance of not happening. So being there for the family. I'm married 20 years, 2 kids, and I've got my mom is still alive. My dad passed away in 2011. So today I stopped over to see my mom, went to pick up prescription drugs, and I had a lot of things I had to do, but I'm very conscious of the fact that I got to see my mom, right? I'm not sure how much longer my mom's going to be here. So I can always make money. The money will always be there, but I know that, your family and your friends won't.
So a lot of people know this. I'm a single father, and I know as a dad that it's hard to raise children having both family members, but having one, it's even harder. And I think that chord right there, well, the self one, I have some improvement on as well too. I don't focus on myself. I feel like I throw myself at the business and I make my hobbies and everything else go the wayside. But the family one is even more distressing, in my opinion, because I'm a single dad. So I'm trying my hardest to raise my 10-year-old daughter. But I also know that if I fail, she fails too. So it's a hard balancing act, but The one thing that you did bring up that I do agree with is when I have something on my calendar, when I have something scheduled, it has to happen. And so I can fix the first two chords pretty easily by scheduling actually and having like for this hour, this is gym time and that's it. Like there's no other time other than that. And it has to happen X amount of days a week. And for Peyton, I can schedule some time too, whether it be an hour, whether it be 2 hours, whether it be a whole weekend, whatever the case may be. Like, I think that is a really good strategy for business owners specifically too, and entrepreneurs is schedule it, put it in the calendar. It does sound a little cliche. It does sound a little weird, but it's you're right, about 90% chance that you'll follow through on it too.
Yeah, I've got a daughter too, and once a year I try to do dad and daughter weekend. We go into the city, do fun things, just her and I, and so if it's not scheduled, there'll be a million. The whirlwind will come in. There'll be a million reasons why it doesn't happen. So it's almost like you're fighting against the whirlwind to make sure it actually happens, and that's why you got to schedule things. I'm a big believer in that. Scheduling things is kind of boring. It's not so exciting. It's not spontaneous, but to perform at high levels in all three, you gotta have a calendar.
And then let's transition to the third chord.
They're a quarter business. Just like I love my family and I love myself, I also love my business. I love the work that I do and the people that I help with their financial planning and asset management. I'm able to take the three chords concept and I'm able to apply that to them, and I'm able to have them become more aware of life besides it just being about the money. And so, not only do I focus on running my financial advisory business, I also have I also am an author, right? So I'm writing, I've got the one book, I'm writing two other books right now. I have a small real estate portfolio with rental tenants. And so becoming and being financially successful is important to me. Again, not for what I can buy with it, but for what I can do with it. I'm a big proponent of philanthropic helping others who actually either can't help themselves or I'm not, I do believe that people have to be, to pay attention to what they're supporting and what they're helping, because sometimes you can actually do harm by helping the wrong people they when they maybe shouldn't be getting help. It might almost enabling people, important thing. So I've been, helping people for 20 years, and you kind of see, all right, this is where you can really make a big difference. And so that's important to me as well. So yeah, so making money and doing well in business, really important. I know sometimes people say, oh, money's the root of all evil. Money does nothing but cause problems. And that's not the truth, right? The truth is that money is a great emphasizer. And so if you're a kind, generous, wonderful person, the more money you have, the kinder, more generous, more wonderful you will be. If you're a mean, nasty, rotten person, the more money that you have, you'll be meaner, more rotten, and nastier. And that's been my experience with financial resources.
Money to me is not it's important. It is because it helps you to pass on wealth to your children or child, or it helps you to do the things that you like to do. However, money is not the most important thing to me. It's what you said prior. I like giving back to people. So like my podcast is about giving information back to people to help them be better, to help people create more success, to help people understand where they might have deficiencies. I'm sorry, we shouldn't use deficiencies. Let's use the word opportunities to be able to address them and become more successful. So I do this for the philanthropy side, right? But the money side, like you said, as long as your relationship is good with the money, like it also adds value, in my opinion.
You see, we all see the Hollywood celebrity, which had huge financial success, but but major trouble. Um, and so again, the trouble was there. It just the enormous wealth basically just created it, made it even bigger, like added fuel to the fire. And so, it's I agree with you. It's some people that are focused on material. And listen, if somebody's focused on material items, you want to go out there and buy 10 cars, more power to you. But I think wealth creation, I think where I'm not sure if you got to the chapter yet, but there's a chapter, I think it's at the end of the book, that focuses on the billionaire who had tons of resources, bought a football team, planes, yachts, everything, and just couldn't find any happiness. And so he ended up, a friend of his said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to Mexico on a mission here. We're going to bring some kids wheelchairs that can't get wheelchairs." So the guy's like, "Oh, I'll go with you." So he goes down there and he brings a wheelchair and he gives it to a kid, and the kid looks at him and with tears in his eyes and says, I want to stare at your face because I want to remember your face, because when I see you in heaven, I want to thank you again. And the guy told me, he's like, he's like, with all the stuff that I had, he's like, I never felt wealthy. It wasn't until that moment where I could actually provide a wheelchair for this kid who couldn't get their own wheelchair is when I felt wealth, really true wealth. And that was like and nothing made the guy happy. I mean, he had every car you can imagine, jets, boats, yachts, cars, none of that actually made him happy, but buying a wheelchair and making a positive difference in the life of somebody that could not help themselves, it was true wealth. And I hope that, the clients that I work with, my hope is that they get to experience that. I work with some real fabulously wealthy people, and I try to encourage people to really get that enjoyment from while they're still here, right? Because we're all none of us are going to get out of here alive, right?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
So a couple questions have stemmed from this. So we identified the three chords. Just to recap, chord number one is self, and that's taking care of yourself, enjoying hobbies, making sure that you're keeping your sanity. That would be the self chord.
Yes.
Number two is family. So being able to balance your business and yourself with family to make sure there's adequate time there. And then the third one is obviously the business and making sure that the business is thriving. So, with that being said, and in all the experience that you have right now, what have you seen when you go and advise your clients? What are some strategies that you've seen where you've seen all of these click? And what are these people doing? What are wealthy people doing right now to make these all click? What are some good strategies to maybe start implementing this a little bit? I know we brought up a few, right? Like scheduling in the calendar time to make things successful, but I know that there's a little bit more that you've seen, and I'd love to enlighten people on that.
We talk about this, and there's, everybody has aspirations to be really terrific in all three areas. And so sometimes people say to me, well, where do I start? And I basically whip out a yellow pad. My yellow pad says get it done. So there's different things I need to get done. So just take a yellow pad, doesn't have to be fancy or sophisticated, and you start writing down all the things that you would like to do in all three areas. So you can basically break it into three different columns: self, family, and business. What are the things that you'd like to do? Start off by doing that, and then you transpose that into a calendar system as to when are you going to work on those different things. And the other piece is, somebody might have a list of 100 things. 100 things is not even possible to get done. Come up with three in each of the areas, two or one, and say, okay, over this next quarter, I'm going to do these different, I'm going to do, 3 things. And if you do 3 things in the 3 areas, that's 9 things that you got done over the course of the year that you might not have actually gotten done, before. So that's because people do struggle with this, right? We all get charged up. We're gonna be great. I'm gonna do all these different things, and then when the whirlwind hits you, it kind of stops.
I agree. I agree with that. And, I wrote down the same thing as you. I don't know if we're on the same wavelength, but I wrote down before you even had brought it up, get it done. I think that's just the mantra that I live. Like, you get it done, you do it, you execute, and you're better off for it. So at the beginning of the year, my biggest strategy was I want to sleep a minimum of 7 hours, and I needed to change my schedule around because I still want to wake up at like 5:30 in the morning so I can get my self portion started, right? So going to the gym in the morning to start the day off for about an hour. And at night, I gave myself about a half hour before bed to read. It doesn't matter what you want to read. Like, if you all want to read a children's book, go read a children's book. But for me, it's reading things that add value to my business to create that success. And so, in doing those two small tweaks this year, I've noticed a little bit of a shift in how I operate a little bit. And I feel a little bit better than what I did last year, because last year it was flying by the seat of my pants and I was being roped or doing the roping or whatever the case may be. I didn't know which day was Monday and which day was Sunday sometimes because I felt unorganized. And so I think for me, structure is good. The calendar scheduling, like you and I were talking about, I think it's solid because it's a structure for me to be able to follow. It's a roadmap that I'm pretty much making for myself. And I'm putting on negotiables in that roadmap. So from 5:30 to 6:30, leave me alone. I'm working out. That's it. From 10 to 10:30, I'm reading. Leave me alone. That's my time to upscale myself, not only for the business, but for myself as well. Everything in between, though, is business, family, and creating the empire or whatever you want to call it, chopping with fire, right? Because it's more than just me at this point. It's everyone. I'm creating that success right there, one step at a time.
The idea of that you had said about getting it done and almost like, really trying to protect your time, right? Nobody's going to call you or really bother you between that 5:30 to 6:30 time, right? So your daughter's probably sleeping, friends, business associates, nobody's calling you at that time. So that's what you got to do, right? So if you plug that in at different times, if you tried to plug in, at 6 o'clock at night, I'm going to sit here and read the book, it's not happening, right? You got your daughter, phones are ringing, it's just not possible. So I think that just listening to you, you know, earmarking that time, and when you do earmark it, is the only way you're going to get it done, right? Right? You can't be spontaneous. You can't be spontaneous about reading that book. It's basically like, this is my time to read the book. This is it.
Yeah, and I purposely bought a Kindle on purpose, like an expensive one, because I hate spending money. I'd rather invest because I know that when I spend money on something, I have to do it. So I kind of purposely like did that on purpose. So I'm starting to do the things that are right for me. And it did take a good solid couple weeks to adjust to it. It was rough, right? Because my normal schedule was wake up, work all the time, go to bed late, do it all over again. And I was noticing I was beating my body down. I was beaten down. I was short fused, short tempered. And so that doesn't help with raising a child either, because you tend to spark a little faster, and that's not okay. So I had to take a step back, and there's a lot that's happened to me, I mean, in between, right? And I feel like I deal with things a little bit better now that my head is a little more solid.
You need that, right? That's, if you're not clear, right? So if you're not focused, you're not clear, you're never going to get to the levels that you want to get to. So it sounds like you got clarity as to what you want for yourself and how you're going to do it, and you're actually doing it. And that's really, it's awesome. It's you're doing what's required. It's doing the deal.
And like you said earlier, no one's perfect at it. I still have opportunities to address, but I took some of them already and have addressed them.
That is that's awesome. That's and if you continue to do that, right, just continue to work on that and do that, um and you don't bite off too much at once, which I tend to do myself. You'll just get a lot done, and you'll do it with balance, and you'll do it with happiness. And that there's you know you, you gotta take a look and say, okay, where did I start 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 1 year ago, and I'm growing. And so measuring yourself against what you actually, where you've come, where you've basically grown from, versus what you aspire to, right? So a lot of times we think we measure ourselves against the ideal, right? And so we might be disappoint ourselves with that. But if you measure yourself against what you've done over the past 1, 3, 5, 10 years, it's a great, it's a great way to live.
So, what's one major key piece of advice if you were to, let's say you and I left tomorrow because time's not infinite, it's finite.
Yep.
What would be one key thing that you would want to impress upon the world? Like, what's one key piece of advice?
I would say one piece would be uh focus on all three. Like, be aware, work on all three. Don't just work on one, right? You need money to live, right? And, it's like, well, money's not important, but and money does help to solve a lot of problems when problems occur in people's lives, right? um and family is important, right? So you got to work on it. That doesn't just happen. Some people think, oh, I'm entitled to family. I don't need to put any work in there because I don't, that's not the way it works. Wrong. And then self, right? People think, well, I don't need to pay attention to my health, right? I'm fine. Wrong. So the one piece of advice I'd give to everybody who's listening is work on all three.
And then just for the listeners, because this book is powerful and I think it's important, especially for my listeners, where can you find it?
It's available on Amazon, barnesandnobles.com. I think it's on target.com. There's a retail, I think walmart.com. And you go, Amazon's an easy place to get it. And it's the 3 Chords approach to life and wealth management for business owners. And I hope your listeners get a copy of it and it makes an impact in their life. Pretty cool.
And for my listeners, I'll drop the Amazon link because I think that's the easiest one for me to be able to drop
Sure.
to the episode description. And I'll source it to you, Rocco, so that way you kind of see like who's kind of taking it in. So I'll make sure everything's good in the episode description for all my listeners.
Thanks, Dustin. This was it was great meeting you. My next trip out to Reno, I'm gonna look you up. Hope to get together with you.
Well, if we have a live event coming up and I do send emails, I'd love to have you at it. I think it would be great to have some of the people that I've interviewed and had on be there for support.
Love to be there. Thank you so much for the invitation.
And thank you for coming on. Thank you for just talking on such a powerful concept. I think we're in this rat race together, right? Of the fast-paced society trying to make it and everything. And sometimes we need to slow down and focus on, well, the 3 chords.
You got it. Nice. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. You take care. Be well.